I know these candidates have been working on incredibly hard. Having just received my EEC last year, I know how much work goes into pulling this off. So I congratulate all of these fine people for doing this hard work. And I really do believe that it's this type of grassroots, community-based action that's going to really make the difference for us and for this country. So what you're doing is not a small thing. And thank you to all of us who are joining to watch and to celebrate these fabulous projects. So with that, I'm going to introduce our EEC coordinator, Dr. Cindy Fitzwilliams-Heck, and she's going to get us started.
Thanks, Bridget. Yeah, good morning. And I'm really excited to be here. Today we celebrate the 4th year of the EEC and its capstones. We have 175 people in the program. 19 of them have received their environmental educator certification. And this year we have 5 candidates who will share their action projects with you. But first, I would like to thank our 2020 EEC committee, all of whom have their certification, which is a prerequisite for being on the committee. They help comment on and evaluate work submitted into the online classroom, review and create documents as needed. They help facilitate Strand 1 workshops, give other EEC presentations, and they also evaluate the capstones. So many of you already know what is involved with the EEC program, but I know we have some new people here today. And maybe it's just a good idea to have a quick overview of our program. This slide shows everything our graduates have completed for Michigan's EEC. So on the far left, we have Strand 1 with its in-person and online experiences to help expand your environmental knowledge base. Then in Strand 2, you plan and implement a lesson based on environmental education workshops you attended. And this is also tied to Strands 3 and 4. And this is where you become an expert in a local environmental concern and actually develop and execute an action plan for making a positive change concerning that issue. And then finally is Strand 5, the capstone, where you share the highlights of your research and project. So I want you to realize that although this program is rather rigorous, it is also quite attainable. And to help you get organized, anyone interested in pursuing the EEC can go to our website and print out the latest EEC official document, which is dated September 2019. And you'll find in Appendix D the personal work plan. And here you can map out what you have done, which you may be surprised by how much you already have completed. And then just plan out what you still need to do. You just set your goals. Now, if you are wanting to be done with the certification in 2021, then you must mark your calendar right now for February 1st and then work back from there. So you need to have all of those requirements that I showed you submitted in the online classroom by that February 1 due date. And that due date is also noted in that EEC document and in the online classroom. So speaking of the online classroom, this is what the homepage looks like for our current participants. So once you've gone through the Strand 1 workshop and have accepted my invitation into the class, you simply start with theme 1 right here. So from there, you just see what you have to do, and it's labeled as such on the next page. Very straightforward. And after you read that to do, you might realize you need some more background information. And so for each of these themes, there is an overview and a read and review section to help you build the knowledge and skills you need to complete the do sections. So now let's do this. I know you are ready for the main event. Here are this year's candidates presenting in the order you see here: Beth, Jessica, Leah, Sam, and Joan. Looking at their topics, their presentation titles, you will see that these projects are very different from one another, but you will soon learn that these projects are very specific to their worlds, and you will see how these projects are not only meaningful in their local environment, but also to them and their audience, and they're pretty special. So the way it's going to go is each person will take a turn and present for 10 minutes, and then we will have a 5-minute question segment after each one. And if you have a question, the way we're going to do it is you're going to type that question into the chat, and we will select the ones we have time for in that 5-minute time frame. And then anything that does not get addressed, and maybe you want to continue the conversation with a particular candidate, we will share the presenters' emails at the very end of today's program. So there's that for you. So for now, just sit back and enjoy these exciting projects, and I can guarantee you will get inspired for your EEC. So you want to jot down some notes and ideas. So our first candidate is Beth Christensen. And Beth, you can get ready. You can unmute and show your video. Beth will share her project on invasive species. And Beth, you can go ahead and introduce yourself and share your experiences with us. So it's all you, Beth.
Okay. I'm Beth Christensen, the Great Lakes Education and Outreach Specialist with the Center for Freshwater Research and Education at Lake Superior State University. And my project is reducing the use of aquatic invasive species in education. And it's about educator awareness about choices we make with organisms in our classrooms. So the statement right here is basically a thumbs up in your reactions if you know what this picture is. You've never seen it before in your life, then you can skip the thumbs up option. And I'm just sort of taking the temperature of the room. This is actually where this project started for me. So that's why I'm kind of curious as to where some of you are with it. All right. Well, the bio bottle, or the ecosystem in a jar, is a really engaging project when you're teaching ecology. So students take a little pond muck, an aquatic plant, some snails, maybe fish if they're lucky, and are, instantly engaged, building their own ecosystem. But the question is, where do these organisms come from, and where do they go when we're done with it? And how do teachers make informed decisions about that? What do they need to know in order to make those decisions? My presentation today will follow the path that I took in order to do this project. From the very beginning and on through the research I did to develop and deliver professional learning and the result of that professional learning. So why aquatic invasive species? Well, first of all, invasive species are those that are out of place. They don't belong here. And they are by definition those that might cause harm to the environment, other organisms, including humans, or maybe even the economy. So as a state surrounded by water, this is a big issue for us. Since the 1800s, 180 invasive species have settled into the Great Lakes. And in Lake Superior and its wetlands alone, there are approximately 100 non-native species that have been identified. For the state of Michigan, there's a management plan specifically for aquatic invasive species. And also there is a complete prevention plan for Lake Superior. I'm focused on the Eastern UP area here because, well, not only that's where the center I work for is, but also it's at the nexus of 3 Great Lakes, and it is the connection point with Lake Superior to the lower lakes. So whatever happens in the UP doesn't always stay in the UP. Why this project? Well, when I was a teacher, this was sort of the standard project when you were doing environmental education, studying ecology. And my colleagues and I didn't really think about what goes into these bio bottles, what do we do when they're finished. Students often brought their own materials, whether it was water or snails or whatever. Well, let's take the example of the St. Mary's River, which runs between Lake Superior and Lake Huron. And we happen to corner the market on didymo, an invasive species also known as rock snot, probably due to its lovely appearance. And my question is, if I'm a teacher in the area and either a student or myself collects water from the St. Mary's River for the bio bottle, and then maybe it's dumped in a different location, St. Ignace, near Whitefish Point, all of a sudden the St. Mary's River might not be the only place we find this. And so unknowingly, we may be introducing an invasive species to another location. So I took a survey of Eastern UP educators. 20 people answered the survey, and out of those 15 said that they use organisms in the classroom. One of the questions was about whether they could identify whether they were using native or invasive species, and there was a lot of uncertainty about that. There were only 2 respondents who said, yep, I'm certain I'm using an invasive species, and it seemed like maybe this is a way that I need to go as far as education. Another question had to do with where you might collect them, collect the organisms that you use, and where you might release them. And there were again some disconcerting results there as far as the choices for release. And none of them really had me feeling good about the process that we choose, because even if we're returning organisms to their collection point, we may have collected invasive species and now we're just returning them where they were instead of doing something about them. That brought me to my goal for this project, which is to basically increase educator awareness of the risks of the organisms they choose and the impacts of introducing aquatic invasive species to the wild through education. We teachers were teaching about maybe invasive species, but we may not be noticing what we're using in our classrooms. So you have to start with awareness. Do we even know there's a problem? Do we even know what an invasive species is? And then you can't really give a problem to somebody and not have some options for solutions. So that was my second objective there. And then finally, safe handling. What do we do with any organisms that we use when we're finished with them? In order to develop valuable professional learning for teachers, I went to a lot of specialists. I looked into those management plans that I referred to earlier, and a big part of those plans includes education as a way to stop or mitigate environmental or aquatic invasive species spread in the Great Lakes. Also, I talked with experts in aquatic ecology and invasive species. Also, the people who are developing lessons that incorporate organisms of any kind, and how schools respond to using those organisms. What do they do when finished? The specimen supply companies and pet stores are the ones that provide these organisms. So I wanted to know how they communicate any issues with those who are purchasing the organisms for classroom use, and also whether they help with getting the organisms back when teachers are finished with them. In designing the training, I first wanted to see what was out there. Were there resources for educators that were all in one location? Was there widely available training for educators on aquatic invasive species, or how to dispose of them, what to do with them? There were a lot of lessons out there for teachers to teach students about aquatic invasive species or invasive species in general, but nothing really to teach teachers about the issues surrounding them. So my job was to fill in those gaps, to give them some resources in a centralized location, and also provide with this training. The training was offered both in webinar and in-person formats. In the Eastern UP, we're really spread out. And so webinar just became the best option for a quick 30 to 40-minute training at the end of the school day. If I did an in-person training, it was usually connected to a professional development that teachers were already in one location for. The training included an introduction and the issues and impact of aquatic invasive species, some of the legalities of possession of these, and how they can take part in stopping the introduction and release of these species. Teachers also obtained access to a number of documents, 22, 23 documents that included anything from safe disposal, alternatives, that kind of thing. And of course, student lessons so that the teachers and students could grow together. Showing the pre-survey versus the post-survey really made me feel positive about the work that I had put into this. You can see that there is an increase in understanding of invasive species and the legalities of possession of them. Also an increase in understanding of how to get rid of these organisms that you're using in the classroom, any organisms, once you're finished with them. Finally, looking at program growth, I need to thank Michigan Sea Grant for hosting a webinar that is available on their website. It's recorded and any teacher can watch it. In addition, I have that Google Drive for teachers to access at any time. And all that information is available for continuing professional development in other areas of the Great Lakes, such as when I presented this at MSTA. We're all connected by water. Something that I do in my area affects you in your area. And I'd like to see this as ripples in water, that we start here, but the training goes out from us to teachers, to their students as they work through this together, so that hopefully one day we won't need this training anymore. I want to just thank everybody who participated in this and you here today for supporting me. So with that, I can stop my screen share and take questions.
Okay, questions you can type into the chat and I will share them with Beth. I just want to say that I love that analogy with ripples in water. You know, that's, you know, I can visualize that and it's very meaningful. And rock snot, I want to touch rock snot, you know, that's just.
Well, you don't really, but yeah, it's kind of cool stuff. It's interesting. And that was my student Molly holding a wad of it. Her research up at Lake State is rock snot and its effect on macroinvertebrates.
We do have a question here. How did you market your trainings?
So I had a lot of help with Kevin St. Ange. He is the My STEM director for Eastern UP. And he did a great job of communicating with teachers, getting the word out, either through his in-person PD or just emails sent to them.
Okay, good. Another question, are other adult educators leading these workshops now too?
I have not gotten to that point where I have sort of recruited others. When I did present webinars, I had people from other MySTEM regions who attended them. And there has been word on, an interest in spreading this. I believe it was Vicki Swicky I talked to down at the SISMA downstate. And we just haven't gotten to that point. The information is available linked from our CFRE website, but I think this is the first step to getting those teachers aware and being able to maybe do them within their own schools and districts.
Yeah, so another comment that was just made was that this would be a great MSTA or Mayo presentation, to consider to do. So do you have plans to continue to do this then, to spread the word and, yeah.
Actually, the focus was the Eastern UP, but as I said, we're all connected. And so it just makes sense to provide this in other areas. I did, as I said, have some people from downstate, my STEM regions, and educators that I knew that I invited to participate, and they found this useful as well. So from this point going forward, making contact with different districts, the educators, team leaders, that kind of thing, to see what I can do to spread it. Because even if it's downstate, I can still provide the information in a webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good work there. Any other questions from the forum here? Okay, thank you, Beth. That was very good. And any last minute comments, or you're good?
I just am thankful for this opportunity and appreciate everyone who helped with putting this together. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Beth. So you can go ahead and stop your video and mute. And next we have Jessica. Here she is already. And Jessica is going to share her action project on nature-led Montessori. So Jessica, it is all you.
Hi everyone. My name is Jessica Hagan and I work at the Montessori School, or TMS, in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I wear many hats at TMS. I am the Health and Wellness Specialist for students grades 1st through 6th, the Earth Committee Advisor, and the Elementary and Licensing Coordinator for the school. I began my EE certification journey in 2018, having recently learned at a Project Learning Tree PD that EE certification was available in Michigan. Thankfully, I found Mayo. In 2016, I started working at TMS in the after-school program. We spent most of our time outdoors. The school is fortunate to own several city lots that are part of the natural area along Axtell Creek that stretches from Kleinstock Preserve to downtown Kalamazoo. In keeping with Montessori philosophy, experiential learning is encouraged and students are given opportunities to explore the schoolyard and surrounding natural areas. I was immediately drawn to an area on the playground that many teachers had complained about because it was wet most of the time, and during the really soggy months, the area flooded and puddled on the bike track. There was talk of filling in the area with wood chips. After some research, I learned that our schoolyard was flooding because years ago, the area was a swamp and is part of the Axtell Creek sub-watershed and within a mile of the Axtell wellhead. Our school building was built in an area that geographically should be underwater. The property had been tiled and retention ponds had been dug nearby to capture the water and transform the property into suitable city building lots. The remnants of the swamp that so long ago graced this place provided little wet nooks in the schoolyard and surrounding natural areas. I was hooked. I talked to the property manager and asked permission to study the area with students and potentially landscape the area with native plants. She reminded me that I did not have a budget, but was excited at the idea of restoring the property and encouraged me to create a project proposal for her to review. I secured a grant from the Kalamazoo Wild Ones and sought the advice of a wildflower expert who met with us to help us better understand the property and appropriate plantings. He encouraged us to consider the monarch butterflies and certify the garden as a monarch way station. Restoring this space with the students inspired me. I saw the potential to connect them to these wild spaces that surround us in a way that facilitates learning and creates appreciation for the land. My EEC Action Project was born. Please join me as I share my adventure. As a Montessorian, I want to share with you my favorite quote by Maria Montessori. When children come into contact with nature, they reveal their strength. Today, we'll discuss how we identified local issues, we created individual student action projects, we developed schoolyard habitat, students formed an Axtell Creek Protection Committee, and then we'll also talk about what's next for TMS. In order to get a better idea of how to improve our schoolyard, we began spending time exploring our property and mapping its features. We regularly completed field investigations and documented our observation of the flora and fauna in our neighborhood. We explored Kleinstock Preserve and Axtell Creek Park. Nearly every time we hiked at the preserve, we encountered students from WMU and K College who were conducting invasive species studies and testing the pond water. My students thought these students were heroes. My students were inspired and eager to talk about what they could do to raise awareness about the issues impacting our neighborhood. We completed a site survey identifying areas in our schoolyard that could be enhanced to better support wildlife. This time around, I asked the students to create a project proposal and submit it to the property manager for approval. This experience afforded many opportunities for learning. Not only did the students need to complete the work of planting the garden, they needed to create a budget, complete the grant application, because we still had no budget, and then present all of the information to the property manager for approval. This was a big deal to upper elementary students. They applied for another grant through the Kalamazoo Wild Ones and secured $500 and won the approval of the property manager. With these funds, we were able to plant a 300 square foot native prairie themed garden. We again consulted a local wildflower expert who visited the school and helped us plan our new garden. We planted this garden 3 years ago, and since then we have propagated 2 additional wildflower gardens and will soon divide our plants to establish a garden at Axtell Creek Park. Several students were really interested in Axtell Creek Park. We would regularly visit the park for recess and had formed a habit of picking up trash. I began offering lessons that involved creek exploration, including macroinvertebrate studies and invasive species identification. The students decided to form the Axtell Creek Protection Committee, or ACPC, named after one of our students' favorite bands. Our study of the watershed led us to contact the Kalamazoo River Watershed Council, who sent our friend Patty to talk to ACPC about how they could help protect our watershed and favorite park. 2 students wrote articles for our school e-news, communicating their findings and sharing a call to action about the trash problems they had observed. We started holding recess at Axtell Creek Park and picked up trash daily. Students tracked the amount of trash we found, enjoyed tracking wildlife, identifying trees and mushrooms, and observing the fluctuating water levels with the seasons. All of these experiences deepening our connection to the natural world and emphasizing the connections between our schoolyard creek and the park around the block. Patty suggested that we consider participating in a citizen science project called Winter Salt Watch. The students were interested. They were always looking for reasons to be near the water. Measuring the amount of salt in the creek led to many lessons. Students learned the difference between point and non-point pollution and shared their findings with the property manager, who agreed to talk to the salt crew about the amount of salt used in our parking lots during the winter months. All of this experience with the students encouraged me to learn more. Luckily, I found the Inland Seas Education Association and was invited to attend the Great Lakes Watershed Field Course hosted by Inland Seas Education Association in Suttons Bay, Michigan. As a participant, I joined 26 other educators on a weekend full of field trips that highlighted watershed management and restoration projects. After completing the training, I received a $300 grant to use on an action project at our school and was also offered the opportunity to bring my students to Suttons Bay for the schoolship program for free. With that $300, we purchased pond survey equipment and additional macroinvertebrate equipment as well. Our trip has been postponed at this time, but we're looking forward to attending the program next spring. Students will have the opportunity to study the major threats to the Great Lakes. A few of the things that we'll look at is we will be measuring the dissolved oxygen levels, studying microplastic concentrations in the bay, and solidifying connections between our local watershed and Lake Michigan. What do you know about your watershed? What's next for us? Because I feel like this was just the beginning. We're just getting started. Next spring, we're planning to plant a native garden at Axtell Creek Park using plants from our own native wildflower gardens. We're in the planning stages right now. We've also partnered with a few residents at a senior apartment community who are now helping us pick up trash and eager to help us plant our garden at the park. We've also been presented with a new opportunity. Our neighbor has donated a small piece of land that connects our two school buildings. This property has a wooded wetland area and a small retention pond. We're looking forward to taking over pond management and adding a rain garden to the property. I'm thankful for our community partners who have helped fund our projects and continue to support our learning experiences. I'm also thankful for you all and your attendance and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. That was very interesting, informative. Love Montessori. Such great connections to STEM, NGSS, and even ELA with the letter writing. So that was a comment made in the chat. What would you say was the biggest challenge of your program that you did? You had a lot going on. What would you say was the biggest challenge?
I think our biggest challenge was also one of our greatest learning experiences, and that was funding. So our school is a very small nonprofit. So I literally had $0. So we have completed this entire project through grants. So I think the securing the funding, at first it was super challenging, but once we had started networking with the Wild Ones and the Kalamazoo River Watershed Council, those things all came together. But funding was an initial big concern.
Right. And just start talking to people and making those connections and networking. That's one of the requirements of the action project, is to develop partnerships in the region. And there are lots of mini grants and substantial grants out there. Mayo is one of them that can offer grants too. Another question that came through here. what were some of the new things that you learned from your stream studies? Like any kind of revelations there of what you discovered in your study?
Yeah, so we looked for pollution indicators and we found the kids were pretty excited to find some dragonfly larvae. So we learned, we had predicted that the creek was very polluted and that it probably was really unhealthy. And we did find a lot of invasive species, but we were excited to see that there were good pollution indicators and that our stream was healthy. We also learned through our conversations with Patty from the Rivershed Council that in 1992, this property that we've kind of adopted was part of a restoration project, and the Kalamazoo Wild Ones and the Rivershed Council had been involved in creating kind of a little program and just a bunch of awareness in the neighborhood. And so the students actually discovered some old signs indicating, you know, Axtell Creek, ours to protect, and a little bit of information about the watershed. So our creek studies led us to uncover some good things through the macroinvertebrate studies and also these amazing signs that we've now kind of resurrected. And we're working on funding to get those replaced as well.
Oh, wonderful. That's nice. Little bonus to the project. Another question we have here is, who is the property manager? And did you have to get permission from them?
So the property manager at our school is also the business manager. I did have to get permission for every step of the way. So for each native wildflower garden, we have 4 now, I've had to submit a project proposal myself the first time and the students after that. And then I also contacted the city of Kalamazoo just to double check that it was okay that we enter the creek and do the macroinvertebrate studies. We're super fortunate to have the location that we have. And one of the bonuses is we have a very large senior apartment complex behind us. And the owner of that complex is very generous. And I reached out to him early in my career here just to let him know that I wanted to study the space and the property because it's beautiful. And again, we're right in almost in the middle of the city, but we have all of this natural space. So I was sure to get permission all along the way. I also had to get special permission from the parents because we are a licensed child care facility as well. And I needed permission to get the kiddos in the creek. So lots of permissions along the way, but pretty smooth.
Yeah, good. That's a good lesson, good message there for everyone is that, you know, communicate with everyone involved, all the stakeholders, and make sure you're getting permission for everything and everyone. So thank you, Jessica. Very well done. You can go ahead and mute and stop your video, and we can move on to our next presenter. We have Leah Savigny, and she is going to share her action project on healthy forests. And so we are all eager to hear what Leah has to say. So Leah, go ahead when you're ready. I am going to mute and get.
Hi, I'm Leah Savigny, and I'd like to present the Healthy Forest Project. This was part of a 7th and 8th grade communications course at Forest Hill Central Middle School. In this place-based class, I focus on giving students experiences in the natural world and then opportunities to share those experiences with others. If you know middle schoolers, then you know they love to eat. So when I started this class 7 years ago, we introduced a tradition. Every year, students collect sap from maple trees around the campus. They boil it into maple syrup and enjoy it on pancakes. But I've been concerned because our forest is in trouble and there isn't an easy solution. There's a lot to think about. I think about the rich land that was here during the time of the first inhabitants of Ada, Michigan, the Anishinaabe, and the negative impacts we've had on the land since that time. I think about the minimal management our school district has been able to commit to the land. Outside of class projects, the 27 acres of forested land where the school sits has gone largely untouched in terms of oversight or stewardship. In the 7 years I've been in this role, I've seen a loss of biodiversity and an increase of invasive plants all over the property. I think about the economic toll these plants take on our community. The Michigan Invasive Species 2019 annual report said that in 2019 alone, Michigan spent almost $1.5 million on terrestrial invasive species. There are many understandable reasons why the district isn't able to engage in management or stewardship, but this lack of foresight is costly. I think about how it's our responsibility to be good neighbors and not allow our invasives to encroach on neighboring properties, and yet they are. The destructive Japanese knotweed on campus traveled under the road through the storm drains to my student Joey's uncle's yard. This makes me wonder, when will the Phragmites that's in 2 retention ponds end up 700 feet away in the neighborhood lake at my student Beckett's house? I think about the importance of this land to our former school secretary, Margie, who walks her dogs on the property daily. My student Natalie, who counts on being able to walk through the woods to school and back. And the countless other community members who use the property day in and day out, and what doing nothing will mean to them. And I think about what impact I can have. When it comes to doing removal projects with my students, I think about safety and also managing the behavior of 30 students with hand tools. And I know I can't do it alone. This is not an easy problem to tackle. But last year, the problem seemed to be more imminent for the South Forest, where we tap the majority of maple trees. The waves of invasives that must have entered this place 20 years ago or so were now changing the land too much, too quickly. So instead of thinking about all the issues on the entire campus, I started honing in on our sugar bush. Just to give you some background, the forest that gives us the most sap is located almost a quarter of a mile from my classroom. The students pour sap into 5-gallon beverage coolers and they hike it back to class. When filled, those coolers weigh about 45 pounds. Obviously, this work is time sensitive. It begins in late winter when the walk out and back can be difficult and unpredictable. Throughout the 4-week collecting season, conditions vary from frozen ground, snow, ice, to mud and flowing water. And so my intention to continue our tradition was in conflict with changes I'd noticed to the South Woods. First of all, the entrances to the woods had become completely overgrown with impassable thorny brambles, multiflora rose, autumn olive, and other plants. The weight of oriental bittersweet vines pulled down several trees, thus blocking our path into the woods. Summer windstorms took down other dead trees, which fell over the trails and made it difficult to walk through. And finally, we've always had a problem with a vernal stream that students have to go through or hop over, being careful not to spill the sap. All those things weighed heavily on me last fall, and I was afraid there would be no syrup. There would be no pancakes. And then at the place-based education conference, taking in good energy and ideas, I had a stroke of brilliance and the Healthy Forest Project was born. Not only was I concerned about getting students out to that area come springtime, but the 5th hour class needed a project to challenge them and to give students of various interests something they were passionate about doing. Right at that time, I was offered a grant from Groundswell, my local hub of the Great Lakes Stewardship Initiative, which would cover the expenses for the plan I was cooking up. Finally, I knew having community partners was critical to this project. Fortunately, professionals and volunteers graciously came on board, offering their time and expertise, being more generous than I could have hoped. Having this resource allowed me to break the students into interest groups or jobs, led by an expert in each area, and to get many different things accomplished each day. These reciprocal partnerships worked because we had shared goals, and there were many advantages for students. They received on-the-job training. They learned about career pathways. They used tools of the trade. They thought deeply about the mundane. They applied their new knowledge to make decisions for our place. They made a remarkable difference. And they documented the process. This project was a total of 7 days with boots on the ground, and I used a spreadsheet to document what needed to be done, to organize the partners, the student groups, and keep track of everything. This living document was invaluable to me staying organized. To keep things organized in the classroom, I put together boxes for each work crew. That way, when class began and the student expert arrived, everyone could get started right away. They didn't need to wait for me. The boxes also included lists of students in each group, as well as reusable name tags on lanyards, tools, and other important things for that group. The Healthy Forest Project was an amazing kickoff to the work, but Rome wasn't built in a day, and there's still a lot left to reflect on and do. As I thought back, I was so happy with how the students engaged with our partners. This was the right project for them. Personally, I could use more training with global information systems and have better follow through with long-term data repository. There were also some issues with students not completing their jobs once the partners were gone. So next time I'll have more specific expectations for all groups. While at this time it's not possible to bring in partners due to COVID, there's still a lot we can do. It took many years of neglect for the forest to get this way, and it will take targeted, planned work to continue improving and maintaining the forest's health. However, Central Middle School students have big hearts and enjoy making a positive impact. So I know they'll be up for doing something to leave the land a better place, especially if that means they can have pancakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. And I am so hungry for pancakes right now. Wow. And we need those healthy forests, don't we? I have a question here. Have you considered getting your forest certified?
Yes, in 2016, I received a grant from the Michigan Forest Service that allowed us to get the almost 200 acres of the entire district certified. So we do have a forest stewardship plan, and I've shared that with all of the different school leaders and so on. There are lots of goals in that plan.
That is so exciting. So how do you see environmental education being affected in the region because of your project?
Well, since this has been happening over time, we only did the big project last year, but every semester, different elements of this have come into play in the class. And until this year, for 6 years, I've been housed in 2 different schools in our district, 2 middle schools. And so the information that I was sharing with students, they take back home. They come back to school and talk to me about how they found such and such of an invasive plant or a native plant at their home or at their cottage up north. And so I do believe that the work that we're doing will transcend past their middle school years and continue into their adulthood.
Wow, that is exciting. A question, do you have oak trees on your property, and did you know acorn pancakes are delicious?
We do have acorns, yes. We've collected them many years, the acorns, and we've never done anything with them. Like, I know what we need to do, but it's just a matter of, okay, we collect them, they sit in a bucket, and they've gone through and found all the little bugs that like to live there. And yeah, that's on the to-do list for sure.
Right. Another question here. Does the long-term plan include additional tree planting or primarily managing existing forest?
Well, in general, just managing the existing forest. Now, we did plant several native shrubs along the forest line and a few into the forest. And also, we have planted in another one of our forests some actual sugar maple trees that we purchased from the conservation district in our county. But really everything that, management wise is, I mean, I don't want to leave a vacuum. We can't just take out the invasives, but the students only planted native shrubs last year.
Good. Do you think climate change plays a role in the declining health of the sugar maples, as far as you can tell?
Well, so we don't have sugar maples on our campus, except for the 5 that my students planted 2 years ago. We're primarily working with red maples and Norway maples. So, and I haven't noticed much of a difference of those. However, I noticed a much greater increase in poison ivy growth and size. And I understand that that is quite affected by increased carbon.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. And so I think that's it for the questions. Thank you, Leah. That was very informative and fun. And so you can go ahead and mute and stop your video. And next we have Sam Lichtenwald, and Sam is going to talk about her cross-curricular field day with her alternative students. So Sam, whenever you're ready, and I'm going to stop my business right now.
Hi everyone, I'm Sam Lichtenwald. I'm a secondary science teacher in the Saginaw Bay region. Share my presentation here with you guys. So I'm going to talk to you guys about missed connections and specifically how I engaged alternative education alternative education students with their local environment using cross-curricular techniques in the classroom. So just to start us off for a second, if you guys can open up your chat window, we want to focus on this word connections. So just think for a moment to yourself and pop it into the chat. What does the word connections mean to you? Okay, so we have sharing. Being a part of something larger. Being linked, community, more again with links, good. So you guys are all right. And anybody that didn't share, if you have other ideas about what connections means to you, as long as you can explain it, you're right. So with this conversation, we talked about cross-curricular efforts as a whole school. So the work that was done, discussed in this presentation, was done at Bay Arnett Community High School. It's a small school with alternative students, about 100 students in seat at any given time, and then another 50 students that are in our online program. So the school mission statement is really to provide that positive community and prepare our students for the real world after high school. Our school is located down here at the bottom right of the screen, and it is a 12-minute walk to the local park, which is situated along the Saginaw River. So my first year teaching at this school, I took the kids to Smith Park as often as I could. We did basic nature lessons like observations, nature journaling, trash cleanups, things along that nature. And then I started asking the kids, because I was new to Bay City, and so I asked them, what are some other natural areas that you guys would like to visit? And immediately people started saying, State Park, State Park. And so I investigated Bay City State Park. They had some existing school programs, and so I made sure to get a hold of the park interpreter at the time, Valerie, and we set up a first day in the field at Bay City State Park in the spring of 2018. So I took the entire school. We met up with partners from the DNR, Little Forks Conservancy, Consumers Energy, and some local naturalists in the area. We did things such as a nature hike. We looked at macroinvertebrates, water chemistry, and things of that nature while being out in the field. But this was just one day, and I wanted to take it a step further. So in order to do that, I surveyed the students. I asked them if they attended, and if they didn't, why not? A lot of our students reported that they were nervous about going on a whole school field trip. And so for the future, I made sure to make it a little easier for the kids and really prepared them for what they were going to get themselves into. Frustrations from this first year, there were some miscommunications between the park and some partners. There wasn't a lot of hands-on work at State Park. It was a lot of the wise sage on the stage and not a whole lot of hands-on for the students specifically. And then from the kids, they said that there wasn't enough choice for them. And so we talked about next year, what can we do to change and make this a better program? And this year, 2018-2019, is what my project for the EEC is based on. So we decided to go with a fisheries theme, and we always root it in water quality issues. And so across all subjects, math, ELA, social studies, science, we talked about fisheries specifically and how it's related to that content area. Instead of just doing a single day, we expanded it to a full week in the early spring, late April, early May. We were able to do multiple days in the field. We had a lot more student choice of what sessions they attended, and we invited a variety of community partners to have more hands-on activities. And in the afternoon, when we went to State Park for one of our days, we incorporated more fun activities for the students to engage in. The way we wanted to conclude this is to have a culminating community symposium where we invited the students, parents of students, neighbors of our school, the school board, and our community partners to really see what students were engaged in for this week of water quality and fisheries experiences. For myself to prepare for this, I took some summer PD in the summer of 2018. And I want to bring your attention to this one in particular, the Summer Institute with Nemi-Glissey. It's the Northeast Michigan Great Lakes Stewardship Initiative. And their focus that year was fisheries. This is where I was introduced to the idea of place-based stewardship education. So I'd heard of PBE, place-based education, and project-based education, but I hadn't heard it specifically with the stewardship piece. And so once I went to this PD with Nemi-Glissey, I really learned that this is how I wanted to root my project. So we're focusing not just on the learning, but the engaging, the stewardship piece. And so we're talking about the specific place, the local heritage, the cultures, the landscapes, and then we're also engaging that interdisciplinarily within all of the subject areas. From that PD came this craziness on paper. So if you ever talk to me and I'm talking about 20 different things at the same time, this is my brain on paper. So now that explains why I'm so crazy sometimes. But I really wanted to figure out how we could root fisheries and water quality in all of the content areas. Our goals for this project, there are 5 of them. We wanted to increase the literacy of not just our students, but also the staff and the community in the areas of the Great Lakes, Michigan's environment, and sustainability practices. And so we use standards like the Michigan Environmental Literacy Plan, the Great Lakes Literacy Principles, and the Environmental Protection Agency's guidelines for sustainability. Our second goal was to engage students in a specific place-based stewardship initiative in order to promote a sense of pride and citizenship in their community. We wanted to connect at-risk youth with specific community members and local organizations to promote healthy relationships and positive perceptions of all involved. We also wanted to provide opportunities for students to apply their knowledge and skills across the content areas. Not everyone is interested in science, not everyone is interested in reading and writing. So we wanted to meet the kids where they were so that they could excel in what they love to do. And then finally, we were trying to encourage higher attendance rates. So I know that typical public school systems have attendance issues, and it's only exacerbated in the alternative school program. A lot of kids are taking time off to watch their siblings, to go to work, things of that nature. So we have a really big issue with attendance at our school. We had a lot of PD for teachers and staff. And we finally decided after a school-wide student survey that we needed to change our 5th goal to improve the mental health of our students through the benefits of nature. We had a lot of reports of depression and drug use, and the attendance wasn't really improving with our efforts, and so we tried to focus that our efforts towards improving the mental health of our students. And so our next year's cross-curricular unit was born, Water Quality and Fisheries. We had the full week, and I'm going to focus on the Bay City State Park field trip. There were 4 stations that students could choose from in the morning: water chemistry, macroinvertebrate sampling, habitat assessment, invasive species identification, natural history museum exploration, hiking and nature journaling, and then an introductory to biodiversity of Michigan fish. In the afternoon, the students got to pick from one of these fun activities, doing a beach cleanup and playing volleyball, fishing, yoga on the beach, tackle crafting, hiking, or nature sketching. The kids got to do, before they went on the field trip, they were able to go, a select 30 students were able to go to the Bay Sail trip, where they sailed for 3 hours into the Saginaw Bay and learned about local environmental issues. They had a guest speaker panel talking about water quality, and we had guests from Bay County, the local tribe, Michigan Conservation District, and the like. Here they are with water chemistry. This is at Bay City State Park. Macroinvertebrate sampling, invasives, and the museum, and fish biodiversity. After they were able to do tackle crafting, they also got to test out their tackle. So the kids thought that was pretty fun. I'm going to kind of speed up a little bit here. So they were able to do a symposium. The goal of this, again, was to share with community members and the school board what it is that they learned during this week. So we were able to meet our parts of our school mission. We exposed the kids to volunteer and job opportunities, and ultimately we increased that trust between the community and adults and our students. And then finally, we made connections with the kids. It was implemented into our school improvement plan. There's been a lot more PD and networking, a lot more curriculum to base our lessons off of so we can expand it to a full year, funding opportunities, and community partners. And that is it. So thank you for attending. I can take questions now.
Thank you, Sam. Lots of good things going on there too. A few questions came through, and one of them was, did you have to change your classroom management techniques to successfully teach alternative students outside?
Hmm. Oh, outside. Well, I wouldn't say have to change them. I already took the kids outside a lot before doing the field trips. We had like I said, Smith Park where we would walk to and do trash pickups and things of that nature. So it was mostly just reminding the students every time we go outside, and when we do larger field trips with the whole school, just having each teacher that's in charge of each group really hone in on those expectations. You know, we are representing the school, we're out in the community working with people that are volunteering their time, make sure we're respectful, make sure we're on task, things of that nature.
So how many, well, who taught the field trips? Like, and how many helpers did you have? Was it you teaching all this stuff? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, so specifically with the most recent event in 2019, or 2019, sorry, we had at the Bay City State field trip, I think we had 12 volunteers come in for our each station, and then each teacher also assisted, so they had at least 2 adults at each station, kind of working with the kids and leading the station. Leading up to the field trips, each staff member at the school, so the math teacher, the English teacher, the social studies teacher, myself, we all had lessons leading up to this where we talked about what is fisheries and water quality related to our local area. What is the economy behind it? What is the social impact? Things of that nature. And so each teacher took on the role leading up to this field trip to talk about what is fisheries and water quality in Michigan related to my specific content area.
Got you. So how many total staff then from your school was present?
Staff, we had about 10 staff members and 7 teachers.
Okay, wow, that's good buy-in there.
And that's everybody. It was a very small school.
Cool, cool. Are you planning another cross-curricular week like this during the school year, during this school year, if possible, or in the future? And will it always be fisheries themed?
Sure. So unfortunately, I got laid off this year, so I will not be doing anything this year in particular, but I would like to continue these efforts at whatever school I land at in the future. So we actually changed not the water quality piece, but the theme within water quality. So we started with just water quality in our first year, then fisheries related to water quality. This past year would have been land use impacts on water quality, where each teacher takes a piece talking about Michigan road salt, talking about farming and agriculture, talking about all of those ideas of how humans use the land and how that impacts our water quality. So I'm not sure where it would go from there for a 4th year. I guess that's up to whatever school I land at.
Right, that's very exciting. All those connections there, that watershed perspective is a great way to teach. You mentioned that you wanted to focus on assessing focus on the students' mental health, right? So
Yeah.
did you assess that somehow?
We did not, unfortunately. When we changed that goal, it was for this past year, 2019, 2020. And with the shutdowns, we weren't able to do our week in the, or our cross-curricular week. A few of us teachers were able to do lessons sprinkled throughout until March. So we did salmon in the classroom and things of that nature. But to actually assess, we were already out of school.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you, Sam. Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, great. So next we have our last presentation, and that will be Joan Chatty's presentation. And Joan is going to be focusing on healthy urban watersheds. And so Joan, you can go ahead and show your video and unmute at this time.
So Cindy, I am unmuted,
Okay.
but when I go to share my video, it says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it. So I'm not sure which of you all. Okay, maybe you've got it. Great.
There you
Okay,
are.
good. Thanks so
Good.
much.
Okay.
Okay,
There you
and
go.
then I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because it
Perfect.
looks like that is working. I'm not sure why everybody else didn't have to do that the same way, but
That is just
okay.
totally fine.
So does that work? You can see my PowerPoint, but you can also see me.
Right. You're all set to go.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So I've gotten lots of great ideas listening to the 4 previous presenters. Wow, impressive. It makes you really proud to be a Mayo member, to hear about all the great things that educators are doing. So again, my name is Joan Shoemaker Chatty. I am the director of the Center for Science and Environmental Outreach at Michigan Tech. I've been here for 25 years. That's given me a lot of time to do a lot of things. But I have to say, the project I'm going to share with you today is really one of my favorites. My job at Tech is to design and implement environmental education and STEM education. I'm entirely grant funded, so one, I'm used to having to write grants, and I also have that flexibility and opportunity to be creative about what I work on. So if you don't mind the financial insecurity, you get the benefit of being able to choose what you work on. So this project, I guess I kind of like to start it out with asking you all, when you turned your water on this morning, did it come out brown and smelly? I mean, if it did, you would not be happy. And so really, that is, in a nutshell, is why this project was really important to do. I'd say it had 2 points of origin or inspiration. One goes way back, and that would be in 2009, Mayo had their conference in Dearborn. And I was there with Mike Mansour, and we're like, how many participants here are from Detroit? How many members does Mayo even have in Detroit? And we realized they had only 2 members. And we're like, wow, we're in Michigan's largest, next to Michigan's largest city. And the goal of Mayo is to increase environmental literacy, and we aren't having any impact here in Detroit. So we really set that as a priority, that we needed to do outreach programs in Detroit. And so that began, again, like I said, I write grants and design projects. And so I ended up designing and writing grants to begin doing teacher professional development in Detroit. But now let's fast forward to 2014. And some of you may know that that was the beginning of the Flint water crisis. And so it really highlighted the need to have clean drinking water. You know, again, with you, that attention getter, if your water was brown and smelly when you turned it on, that would be a real problem. And that's what the Flint residents were confronted with. So, so the idea of creating a project like this for Detroit on the heels of the Flint water crisis, obviously there was a lot of awareness and a lot of concern about water. So that's where this project comes from, creating Great Lakes stewards and promoting clean water and healthy urban watersheds in Detroit. It is a project that was funded by the Environmental Protection Agency, and it was a 2-year project that ran from December 2017 through September of 2019. Now, as you all know, you never want to do anything alone. And so here is the list of project partners. And wow, this was a big project. So it was really great to have this network of partners. Now, the ones that you see right below Michigan Tech University, so I was like the principal investigator, the lead on the project. The EPA requires that you have 5 subawards. And I think that's like, wow, what a great idea, because that means that the lead is forced to partner. That's a great thing. So again, these were they were subawardees, which just means that they were committed to participating in the project, and they received a $5,000 grant to do so. So it connected us to some really key partners, between Wayne State University having their Healthy Urban Waters organization to having the Detroit Zoo Belle Isle Nature Center was a great place to hold workshops. Detroit Audubon and Southwest Detroit Environmental Vision had great environmental educators that could contribute. And obviously we wanted to partner with the school district, the Detroit Public Schools Community District. And in addition, the folks you see below that line, those are the state and federal agencies, and they provided a lot of cost share in terms of their staff time in presenting at workshops and helping to lead with field trips and providing curriculum environmental education resources. And I know a couple of those are on today's webinar. And I'd just like to give a shout out to Natalie Elkins with DNR. She helped present one of the workshops. Tom Acapinti with Department of Environmental Quality, which I know is now Eagle Energy, Great Lakes and Environment, provided the Meeks water quality units. So these were really beneficial to the program and helped us to have a much larger impact. So project goal was to increase environmental literacy and water stewardship behaviors of Detroit middle school students. And so in order to do that, we needed to reach out to their teachers, because obviously that's an efficient way to reach a lot more students. And so we wanted to increase the teachers' environmental education teaching skills, as well as their content knowledge. You know, they might, you know, they're not necessarily all science teachers, but the majority of them were, but it doesn't really mean they know a lot about the water resources in Detroit, who does what, and they don't have the resources to teach their students about it. So that was really key. Increasing awareness of natural resource careers, that's kind of a sustainability piece, as is reaching out to teachers and increasing their skills, because they're going to continue this project. They're going to continue to interact with students. So it extends this beyond having a two-year impact, or we interacted with each group of teachers for 1 year. So really extends it beyond that 1 year. And then engaging students in being stewards of their water resources. So as you know, with objectives, something measurable, like, so how much? Okay, we had 5 workshops each year for the participating teachers, and then they led their students on 3 field trips. They engaged their students in doing at least one stewardship project, and they integrated in raising awareness, talking to their students about careers in natural resources. And in fact, again, as science teachers, they're not really that familiar with career opportunities. So that was really informative to them and really useful to them. We all know we can't live without water for more than 3 days, and we need to be clean water. So the number of teachers and students involved over this 2-year project, our goal was to have 15 teachers per year. We didn't always reach that. Sometimes teachers might start and not stick with the program because it did demand a fair amount of their time. So in the end, we had 26 teachers over the 2 years. Again, half, 13 or so each year. And then they each worked with one class. They had to choose a class, and they could have up to 30 students in that class, just because we could only manage so many students on these field trips. And that those teachers came from a total of 16 middle schools in Detroit. So just, you know, like, why would a teacher want to do this? So as you can see here, there's a variety of incentives. Again, it's a big commitment because they're going to be attending 5 Saturday workshops. But fortunately, the Detroit Public Schools Community District provided them with a stipend for attending teacher professional development on Saturdays. And plus they could earn the continuing education units. In addition, the teachers received classroom teaching resources, activity guides, and a very small mini grant to create a school rain garden, because I love to be able to leave a teacher with something that they can continue to teach from year to year right there at their school. In addition, teachers loved getting their students out of the classroom. They know the value of that. And so being able to have access to these field trip stipends, we really helped plan the trip, and that's a huge benefit to a teacher, because that takes a lot of time. And you can see they received a 1-year complimentary membership to Mayo, so that's really great. And lastly, they have that opportunity to interact with their peers, expert educators, as well as scientists and natural resource managers. So they gained a lot, but it still took a lot of time on their part. So I'm not going to go into great detail here, but these workshops are going to look familiar to you just because it's probably you've been to something similar, at least some of them. One I want to mention, if you look at the second one, where it says MEEC's water quality unit, and Detroit's green infrastructure. To me, that is a key aspect because I always like to share positive. And so I don't want them to always think things are bad or Detroit's so polluted, that there's some really positive things going on there. So that was really great to expose both the teachers and the students to that. Here is just some photos of their field trips. Everyone couldn't do exactly the same thing just because it would be asking a lot of a presenter to be having to present. Again, if we have between 13 and 14 teachers each year, most field trip hosts are not going to be able to participate that often. So we had some choices. So for their first field trip, they'd either go to the drinking water plant or the wastewater treatment plant, or they would do a green infrastructure tour. For on that upper left picture, there is the water treatment system in Detroit, and pretty darn impressive. Detroit provides water, it's called the Great Lakes Water Authority, provides water for 4 million people in Southeast Michigan, serving 125 communities. So that's like mind-blowing, really, when you think of it. And I always like to bring them back and go, that's an environmental engineer at work, because they're the ones that design that process. And that's also true for the wastewater treatment plant. That's the students in the upper right. Oh man, you get to use all your senses there. They don't forget that. And then the second field trip involved having them do some ecosystem monitoring, because I think it's really important for students to know how scientists gather data, how they evaluate the health of an ecosystem. So I want them involved in doing that. And I'm sure many of you have done stream monitoring, looking at macroinvertebrate indicators and doing water quality tests. And then lastly is stewardship. Like, we all have to be part of that. We all have to be part of the solution. And so having them get out and do a stream cleanup makes them feel good, like they had an impact. And it's one of those things you want to bring your family back to share with them. I want to highlight Wanda. Wanda happens to be on today's webinar, which is really great, but it really depends on, carrying this forward really depends on teachers. Well, I should say, one, being effective while it's happening and then continuing it. And Wanda was just a star. She was always sharing ideas that we could then share with the rest of the teachers about how she was preparing her students and how she would debrief them. And she would share, she had a great Twitter account to follow. She would show photos of storm runoff. And anyway, so she was really a great example of what we want to see teachers doing. And I would just want to add here as well that Wanda is now a member. She got excited about doing out of the classroom education, but she just retired last year. So she's not doing it in the classroom right now, but now she can get involved and facilitate a lot of these kinds of programs for classroom teachers. And she's also joined Mayo's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So we're going to get to continue to work with Wanda. So now I want to share with you what were some of the impacts of the project. Well, I'd kind of like to share the frustration around trying to get good measures. I had an evaluator, and together she and I, we had at the beginning of the year, they would take a pretest. At the end of the year, they would take a post-test. And this was true of both teachers and students. In addition, we had pre and post for every workshop for the teachers and pre and post for the students for every field trip. Well, as much as we tried, and we had paper copies and we had online copies, it was just really challenging to get as much, to get them all to participate and turn in their forms. But here I want to show you the pre and post between teachers feeling like they can present water-related environmental ed programs. So, I like to see that black line, it went up. So at least teachers do feel like they've left with confidence and skills and resources to continue to do this work. Next, the teachers are assessing how aware their students are of where their water comes from and what happens to it after it's used. So if you look on the left, you can see, 50% slightly agree that their students might be aware of this. And it's in addition, the other side, if you look on the right, you can now see for the post teacher that if you combine the strongly agree and the agree, we now have up to 75% feel that their students have gained this knowledge over the project. Being aware, this is the teachers responding here. Are they aware of local organizations, agencies, experts who can help them? This is key because, again, we're talking about sustainability. We're not going to continue with the workshops, but we want them to know how they can continue to have their students interact with these various experts. And of course, they're also career role models. And next is, do they know where their drinking water came from? You can see, again, between the left and the right, we're looking for that blue, and the blue doubled on the right. So a lot more know where their drinking water came from. And then are they aware of jobs or careers in water? So again, we had a significant increase there as well. So, so we do feel like we had an impact on students and teachers. Here's a couple of quotes from some of the teachers. And basically, I guess the first one, my students understand that their behaviors have an effect on our water resources, and it made them think of what's their responsibility to protect their water resources. So that's really key. That puts it in a nutshell of what we would hope the takeaway would be. I want to also add, I didn't have a specific slide on this, but in terms of dissemination, so I have presented at several conferences. One would be the International Association for Great Lakes Research, to share this project again, that hopefully it might inspire others to do some piece of it. In addition, some of you may have, I worked with a couple of the teachers, and they presented at the Mayo Conference in Port Huron, and they shared their work. And then in addition, two of the partners also presented at the Detroit Sustainability Conference, so they could actually share with a whole new group of people, not educators per se, about what students were doing. And then also the last would be the way that teachers have been empowered. So I know that teachers continue to take professional development to improve their environmental education skills. And again, as I mentioned, Wanda is a perfect example of empowerment and going forward. And now I'm hoping that she's going to become a very vibrant member of Mayo, and we're going to benefit from her enthusiasm. If you notice some of her questions in the chat, she goes right to it. So I think that's all I have time for, but I would love to keep going. I didn't have a whole lot to say about STEM career role models, but I'm all about it. Okay.
There's a lot to say. Thank you, Joan,
Thank you very
for
much.
that. A lot of great ideas and important work being done in urban watershed areas. Thanks so much. One question that came through, what would you say, just briefly, since we're almost out of time here, your biggest challenge with this whole project? Just in a nutshell, what was the biggest challenge?
It was a lot to manage, let me tell you. So organizing field trips and having enough people to help with all those field trips was huge. And like I mentioned, the evaluations. You want evaluations. It's a challenge of environmental education, is to show our impact. And despite having the evaluations available, we just didn't always get them back. Teachers are so busy. So those are two big challenges.
Yeah, that's something that we all need to work on and be diligent with, trying to get those evaluations out there with everything that we do, and just be persistent, I guess. So thank you, Joan. And wow, you can go ahead and mute, Joan, and
Okay.
turn off the video. We didn't have any other questions here, but just, a lot of people very motivated, inspired, energized by your presentation and everyone's presentations this morning. It's been just very, very exciting. And I just want to share the screen that shows the emails for our candidates, oops, that is not it, just a quick review, right? All of that wonderful stuff. And we just really appreciate everything that you do in environmental education and what you did for your EEC project. And we will be reaching out to these candidates this week with their evaluations that the committee will be working on. And our candidates will be recognized more formally at a future Mayo event and given their certificates. So here are their emails, and I encourage you to continue the conversation with them with other questions. And my email is down there as well. So I'm always here to help you think about brainstorming your EEC project. And Bridget, did you have any more things that you want to add?
Yes, thank you candidates for sharing your incredible work. What a great way to start a Saturday. It's very nice to feel so uplifted in the fantastic things that you're doing. Your dedication to improving your communities through environmental education is very admirable, and we certainly appreciate you doing it and sharing it with us today. I would encourage any of you that did utilize green space around your school or facility to make sure that it is entered into the My Pines, the collaborative project that Mayo is doing with the DNR. I'm putting the link in the chat right now that allows you to enter green teaching spaces onto the map. And My Pines stands for the Michigan Partners in Nature Education Spaces. And it's going to be an incredible tool that allows teachers to look and access green places for them to do environmental education right near their school or places of work. So I encourage you to look at that and definitely enter your space if you've not done that yet. I think that what you probably found through your projects and what I find with my students right now is that people are ready. Kids are hungry to dig in. They see the problems, they recognize the work that needs to be done, and they need opportunities to dig in and make a difference. And you are the leadership that's making that happen. And that's just so incredibly important right now. I can't tell you enough that you're like a superhero for the environment. And that's what educators are. So thank you for that and for the crucial work that you're doing. If you've attended any Mayo activities, virtual, of course, in these past months, you know that we've been very busy and we've got a lot going on and there's a lot of momentum. The energy is there. So please stay tuned, keep your eyes open for what's coming, virtual or otherwise, and let's keep the Mayo momentum going. Thank you, Cindy and EEC committee, for the hard work you put into making this happen, and congratulations, candidates. Well done. Thank you for joining us today, and have an awesome weekend, everybody.